Hi, my name is Dan Zeilinger, and I have been a world-traveling full-time trad jazz musician for the past 40 years. Some of my most memorable performances were on the lawn of the Edinburgh Castle, at Imperial Palace in Japan, as well as TV shows and commercials across the world. I've met many people during my career and have spent many hours on stage and off with these musicians, talking about jazz, life, and more. Some are touring musicians, some are theme park warriors, and some are casual musicians who play on the weekends with friends. I think they all have stories worthy of a movie script, and through these interviews, I'll be sharing them with you. Hi there, this is Dan Zeilinger with Trad Jazz Today, and my next guest is somebody who I've known a lot longer than I think he knows I have, and it'll be interesting to discuss at times with him. A great trumpet player, one of the great lead players of all time. He's been in so many different bands and organizations. Of course, a phenomenal jazz player. That's Mr. Mike Bax. Hello, Mike.
Hi, how are you doing, Dan?
Good. So I know you're curious about what I meant by all that, but do you remember once upon a time in the National Association of Jazz Educators?
Sure, of course.
At a conference in St. Louis, and you were judging a contest that Southern Comfort put on.
That's right. I judged that contest many times.
I was the tuba player that won.
Ah!
Along with Dan Barrett on trombone and all those guys. I was the tuba player for the Southern Comfort Dixieland band.
Oh,
and I remember walking into the hotel and hearing you play polka dots and moonbeams in the bar. And that's when I introduced myself then. Of course, you were a judge, so you can be too friendly. And you and Matt Benton and Tommy Newsom.
We were probably all sitting there having a drink. Yeah.
And that's when I first met you. It was way back then.
Man, yeah, that Southern Comfort thing was a great thing, and it's too bad that it ended. The interesting thing was that I was sort of part of helping set that up when I first left New Orleans. Well, before I left New Orleans, after I left the Dukes of Dixieland, when I had my own group, it was the New Orleans Jazz Band. And then when I moved back to California, I had met, no, take it back. Through that contest, I had met the guys that were the big shots at Southern Comfort, going out to dinner and stuff. And so I asked them, I said, has any band ever used the name Southern Comfort Jazz Band? And they said, no, we've never allowed it. And I said, oh, because I was thinking that would be especially with the contest for NAJE, I thought it would be a great name. And they said, well, wait a minute here. We know your band and we know you, and why don't we do that? And I said, what legalities do we have to have? And what was his name? John, I can't remember his last name. He was vice president of the whole organization. He said, hand me $5. I said, what? He said, we have to pay for the use of the name. Hand me $5. So I handed him $5, and the first album that we did after I'd moved back to California from New Orleans has the Southern Comfort logo on it.
There you go.
Called the Southern Comfort Jazz All-Stars. And that was the name of the band for many years until Phil Franklin, who was vice president of Great American Federal Savings, before all that savings and loan debacle, and he was also one of the big people behind the San Diego Jazz Festival.
There you go, sure.
So he came to me one time and he said, would you consider changing the name of your band? And I said, why would I do that? And he said, well, I would like you to represent Great American Federal Savings, and so we'd like you to be called the Great American Jazz Band. And I said, well, gee, that's very interesting. And he said, we want you to do TV commercials for us. What? TV? Yeah, we want you to play and act in TV commercials, your whole band. So we filmed a bunch of commercials for him. And I mean, that was really good because all that's when we were doing a lot of traditional jazz festivals, and the pay at festivals was semi minimal.
Oh yeah.
They added to our pay every festival because we were wearing Great American Jazz Band shirts and representing the band, and they had a big banner. And so from that time on, and that's 20 some odd years ago, from that time on, no, 30 years ago, I guess, it's been, my band when it was doing a lot of festivals, and now I still get it together once in a while, and it's the Great American Jazz Band, and there's the logo.
Yeah, isn't that interesting? Obviously, now what's funny is I was telling you before we actually dropped the introduction that I started out as a high note lead trumpet player through college and high school. I was a high note guy. I played in Cuban salsa bands for about 12 years.
Wow.
And you very largely was responsible for my switch to playing Dixieland tuba. Since you judged the Southern Comfort, actually Golden West College band at the time, as the winners, I sort of traveled those channels, and now I've made my living for 40 years as a professional Dixieland tuba player.
That's great.
But
that's a lot more work than being a trumpet player in a Dixieland band.
You betcha.
Oh man, I have all the respect in the world for tuba players.
And exactly, but I had the facility from the valves on the trumpet, and I had a melodic sense about it. So
Sure.
it made me slightly better than average tuba player when I was kind of, especially in Southern California. You have the Wayne Bergerons and all this stuff happening at the same time. And so I managed to eke out a living as a tuba player, where I don't think I could have done that in this atmosphere as a trumpet player.
I have to tell you, I just yesterday spoke with Wayne for about 45 minutes. He's just gone through throat cancer, and he's doing great. His voice sounds wonderful, and he's starting to play again. In fact, he said he did a one session for some TV show from his home because he has a home studio. That we can do that now. You see, with all the stuff that's on the Facebook and with all these people playing. And if you remember the old joke from years ago when somebody wasn't playing really good, and you say, "Oh, you're phoning in your part."
Yeah. Now we are.
Now we do.
Oh gosh, I didn't even.
But anyway, I just want to say that Wayne is doing great, and I was so happy to hear it.
Well, I got a little tidbit that'll shake your world. Wayne and I met in drum and bugle corps in the 70s.
Oh wow, yeah.
So that's a long time ago. But let's talk about the fact that you were born in Oakland.
Yes.
I never knew you were a California guy back when I met you in St. Louis. So it's just funny how the world kind of revolves around certain things. And you went to Oakland High School. Now, do they have a good music program there?
They had a great music program. Of course, it's all changed now. But, oh yeah, Oakland High, we had a college prep music program. So we had band, orchestra, dance band, not jazz band, dance band, which played for all the school dances. And then we had a theater orchestra that played for the drama department. And we had ensembles. We had, we had arranging classes and theory classes. We had all that stuff in high school.
Did you actually learn improvisation then also?
Oh yeah. They didn't have an improvisation class, but in dance band we worked a lot on that. And the interesting thing, a lot of great musicians went through that program. But at the same time, if you know Fred Radke, who now leads the Harry James Orchestra, I graduated together from high school. We've been best friends since we were 14 years old. We still stay in touch all the time. And we used to joke in high school. Well, it wasn't a joke back then. I said we were best friends, but our one argument was he would always say Harry James has the best band. I say, you're full of it. Stan Kenton's all over Harry James. And we used to argue about that. And you think about the odds against two kids from a high school ending up being the lead trumpet players on the bands and now leading those bands.
Sure.
The odds against that are just, so yeah, we had a very, very good music program in high school. And I was already into traditional jazz in high school. I was already a Dukes of Dixieland fan. And it was funny because some of my friends that were also into that, they liked the Firehouse Five, but I said, no, I like the Dukes of Dixieland. They're just the greatest.
Well, that's kind of a hotbed. That whole area is a hotbed for traditional jazz. And although my show is called Traditional Jazz Today, it's kind of a misnomer. Nobody wants you to use the term Dixieland anymore.
I know.
And I just, one of the things that comes up in our discussions is the fact that musicians really don't usually make those divisions. Those are all done by scholars. And
Yeah,
we'll play.
I agree.
We'll play whatever puts money in our pocket.
Well, and to me, I don't care what you call it, whether you call it New Orleans jazz, whether you call it traditional jazz, whether you call it Dixieland jazz. If you're playing that idiom, doesn't it represent all of that?
Sure.
See what I mean?
Exactly. It's early
It came from
American,
New Orleans,
early American pop
you
music,
know.
if you want to.
Yeah, and for kids today, traditional jazz is John Coltrane. I mean, think
Oh,
about it.
I know.
So traditional jazz, that's that term is a little misleading sometimes.
I'm sure you know that there's even a little bit of a argument about. There's some people who want to claim that American jazz came out of the Ozarks and the Irish traditions that came down. You've heard that, I'm sure.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Especially with the advent of the original Dixieland Jazz Band, who, of course, were a bunch of racist Italians. But
actually, if you think about it, what really came out of that was bluegrass.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, bluegrass goes straight back to all of that stuff, and you think about there are a lot of similarities because boy, there's a lot of bluegrass musicians who are great improvisers.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I played with a couple. Doug Maddox is a good example of
Sure.
of a five stringer who plays everything. So cool. And then you went to you got your degree from the University of the Pacific.
Yeah, in classical performance.
In classical, so there wasn't a big jazz program there.
Oh, when I went to Pacific, you weren't allowed to practice jazz in the practice room.
Or speak its name, huh?
It was a staunch classical conservatory. And see, the interesting thing was, when I graduated from high school, I had scholarships to a few different schools. And I had been to Pacific Music Camp as a kid. So, of course, that sort of influenced me. And back then, I was planning on being a symphony player. And most of my education, trumpet education, was all classical, even though I was playing. I won't say that in high school I was playing a lot of jazz per se, improvised, but I joined the union before I was 17, and I was playing in a society band. So I'm reading society band stuff, and I could improvise a little bit. And I had a small group that played out of the combo works books and also knew a lot of tunes. So, but I wouldn't consider myself a real jazz player back then. I was really concentrating on classical performance, and so I auditioned, for University of the Pacific, then College of the Pacific, and got a scholarship there, and planned on being a symphony musician. Well, the summer between high school and college, Don Jacoby, the famous trumpet player, actually paid my way to go to the second Stan Kenton camp.
Oh my!
It was in 1960 at Indiana University. It was the second camp he had ever done, and I went to that camp. I was one of the youngest kids there because it was mostly college guys, and I think there were like at least a dozen bands, and I think I made lead in the third or fourth band. And then I also played in John Laporta's head band. You can't call it anymore, but it was a band of kids who could improvise, and we didn't have any music. And then also Conte Condoli and Jimmy Maxwell, Kansas Jimmy Maxwell, were the trumpet teachers, and Don Jacoby had called them and told them about me. So they needed a fourth trumpet player in the Kenton band, and I was 17 years old, and they put me in the Kenton band.
Wow.
So not only was I playing in my student bands, I was playing in the Kenton, the faculty band, which that summer the band was off. And so it was literally a history of the Kenton band. Eddie Safransky was playing bass, Charlie Mariano was playing lead alto, Sam Donahue was playing jazz, tenor Conte Condoli was playing jazz, trumpet Buddy Baker was playing lead trombone, on and on and on. So I forgot to turn my phone off.
That's all right. I like the music.
That's funny. I forgot to turn what my ringtone is my trumpets group.
There you go.
So I'm playing in my student bands, and I'm playing we alternated because the whole North Texas 1 o'clock band was there. We alternated nights with them. So at the end of that 2 weeks, and I was even shorter then than I am now, and I go up to Stan Kenton and look up at him and I say, Mr. Kenton, I'm going to play in your band someday. And he said, if you want to bad enough, you probably will. Which, of course, I mean, he was so great with kids. And of course, what I heard was Stan Kenton said I can play in his band. You know, so from the time I was 17 till the time I joined the band when I was 27, that was my goal in life. Even though all that time I was playing traditional jazz, because I love playing traditional jazz just as much as I love playing modern jazz. Or I guess if somebody cornered me and said, you have to give me a favorite, probably my favorite is playing lead trumpet in a big band.
Oh,
But,
sure.
you know, I've always loved playing traditional jazz and I've always done it. And in
Yeah.
fact, I got my gig playing with Pee Wee Hunt's band because the Canton Orchestra was playing. There was a Holiday Inn in Waukesha, Wisconsin, that put a big tent up in the summertime, and all the big bands played there. Pee Wee Hunt's band happened to be playing in the bar. It was a big, big hotel, and so and for that gig, Smokey Silver was playing cornet. The usual player, who technically I replaced, was Bobby Hackett.
Okay.
Anyway, we talk about two different styles of playing. Anyway, so I went in after our concert and sat in with Pee Wee's band. And it was somehow or other, Roger Niven, the drummer, who was the road manager, knew somebody. And after I left the Kenton band, within a month, they called me and said, listen, would you like to go on the road with Pee Wee Hunt? I said, my God, I'd love to go on the road with Pee Wee Hunt. And so the last 3 years, he didn't travel all the time, but the last 3 years of that band, I was the trumpet player. And I got to play with Charlie Hooks, Chuck Hedges, and Jack Mayhew. Talk about three great
Oh, my.
lead clarinet players. Of course, Pee Wee on trombone, great rhythm section. And everybody in that band, usually except the clarinet player, was old enough to be my grandfather. It was a very interesting thing. I was, you know, because I was a young,
I'm
still
sure
a
you
young
learned an
guy.
awful lot from those guys.
And the guys, I'll tell you, this is a good joke. The guys in the band loved me for one thing. I convinced Pee Wee that for some reason I had a mental block and I couldn't learn the tune O, which was the second biggest hit after 12th Street Rag. The band hated playing O. And I convinced Pee Wee, I don't know, Pee Wee, I don't know what it is. I just, so he stopped playing O. And the older guys have been, yeah, Vax. Well, we did play 12th Street Rag at least a couple times every night. But that was a
Amazing.
great band. And the interesting thing about Pee Wee's band was not only did they play more traditional jazz, they played a lot of swing tunes too. And of course, Pee Wee was a great trombone player,
Oh, yeah.
you know. So my first gig after Stan Kenton was Pee Wee Hunt.
Wow. Talking about jumping from one pool, a deep pool, into another deep pool. However, you know, you've been boxing above your weight for quite a while, in a metaphorical sense. You know what I'm talking about. That's really wonderful. You know, a lot of your contemporary fans don't know about your roots in early jazz and the fact that
That's
you
right.
you spent time with the Dukes of Dixieland and
Yeah,
all these things.
when Frank Assunta died, um, John Shoup was managing him, and John took over the band. And Connie Jones, John is a good guy, but sometimes hard to get along with a little bit. Anyway, Connie Jones did the gig for a few months, and he and John didn't get along. And so John was originally from Chicago, and he knew the people at Con, and I was a Con artist back then. I was a Con artist, and and so he called Con and said, "Do you have any trumpet player who knows how to lead a band and play traditional jazz?" And Gary Sigurdsson, the head of artists, said, "Well, Mike Vax has been doing that for years." So I get a call. I'm. This is funny because Milwaukee's a good place, right? I'm back in Milwaukee, in the same city in Waukesha at the high school, and I did a clinic and concert. We're at a party at the band director's house after the concert, and there's a phone rings, and the band director answers it, and he says, "It's for you." I said, "What? What do you mean it's for me?" What is this? Hollywood calling?
That's
What is
right.
this to me? How does anyone? So I answer, and John introduces himself, and he says, I manage the Dukes of Dixieland, and we really would like to have you consider playing. And of course, having been a Dukes fan all my life, I said, well, gee, I would love to. Could you give me just a day or two to sort of figure things? No, no, no. If you want the gig, you have to be here tomorrow.
Oh my.
And I said, really? He said, yeah, we have to have somebody because Connie had left. They were playing for some 5,000 person huge convention at the Marriott that night. So I said, yeah, I'll take the gig. He said, and this is John, because he's already, I think, okay, you already have a ticket to New Orleans. When you get to the airport, there'll be a limo waiting for you. It'll bring you to the Monteleone Hotel. You'll meet the guys. I'll give you a list of their names. You'll talk about what you want to play, and then you got to go over and play for this convention. Okay. So I get there. I have about 15, 20 minutes. I meet the guys. We talk about tunes we know. We make a set list, and I go over and front the Dukes of Dixieland with a 15-minute rehearsal. And so I did that for a couple of years. And then I wanted to sort of stretch out a little bit. And that's when I formed New Orleans Jazz Band, which was a little bit more modern. We still played a lot of traditional repertoire, but we played it in a more modern vein. Um, and the funny thing is, when I left the Dukes, we opened at the River Queen Lounge at the Marriott Hotel up on top. So anyway, so yeah, so it was a great time with the Dukes. The band was so good. Otis Bassoon on clarinet, Bob O'Rourke on trombone, Tim Herbez on piano, Phil DeRoy on drums, and I mean on bass, and I'm looking at his face now. His name went out of my head. The drummer. Anyway, and then some of the personnel changed, although the front line didn't change the whole time I
By the
was
way, I
there.
just interviewed Mike Morroy last week. So
Who did you interview?
Mike Morroy,
Oh, okay.
and he played tuba. I think he was the last tuba player with the
Yes,
Dukes. Yeah.
yes. Um, and of course, back then we were using string bass.
Right.
Um, I don't know if there was just, because when I got there, I mean, it was already string bass, and I don't know if there was not a plethora of tuba players at that point in New Orleans, and I didn't see too many other than like Onward Brass Band or those bands. You didn't see tuba much at all. Everybody was using string bass,
Right.
but it was a great band, and we carried on the tradition of the Dukes, which basically is a little bit more arranged. So a lot of the tunes we had figured out, we weren't reading music, but we figured out, and we had arrangements of stuff. And then we were doing more modern stuff,
Sure.
and some of the trad people hated it, but the audiences, like when we did symphonies or something, they loved it because it combined everything. So the first record I did an arrangement of Hey Jude, which we recorded. I did an arrangement of the Gillette Look Sharp March,
Oh, sure.
as,
Da, da,
as
ba, dum, ba, ba, da, da.
almost, yeah, almost as the disco thing. And we did a lot of the traditional stuff. And then John had a couple of originals written for the band in traditional jazz style. So yeah, that was a fun time. I really enjoyed it. And of course, for me, that was really the start of my being very serious about being a jazz player. Up until that point, with Stan Kenton, with other bands, I'd been a lead player and a high note player who played some jazz. And that's one of the things I thought about moving to New Orleans is what better place to start working on my jazz than the root of it all, you know? And so that's what I did, man. I really worked at it. And of course, one of the things that I told John Shoup, if I come to New Orleans, I have to meet Al Hirt. Yeah, well, that's no problem. So not too long after I moved to New Orleans, every year they would honor somebody and give them the key to the city and all that. And that was a year for Al Hirt. So they had all the trumpet players in from all around Bourbon Street. Everybody played something, and and they used me as the finale, and we did Closer Walk, but we played it so slow and fast, and the finale was I was playing it up an octave. So after we play, uh, John takes me over, and I get to meet Al, and we became very good friends later on, and so he's John introduces me, and he looks up and he says, "Oh, you're the kid with the high notes," and I said, "Yeah, I guess so," and he said, "That was my nickname from then until he died, the kid with the high notes."
Well, you have an astonishing range. I've on and off. Of course, I've been a fan of yours ever since the Southern Comfort thing. But I'm also a ex big band trumpet player, a lead trumpet player, and so I I've kind of followed you around in all the stuff you do. The Great American Jazz Band was another interesting band you were with, because you kind of encompassed a lot of different styles with that group.
Oh yeah, definitely. In fact, it's funny. Even before Igor's band came on the traditional jazz circuit, some of the tunes we were playing were country and western tunes in a Dixieland style. Even before he had come on the scene. But yeah, we did. We would incorporate pop tunes. One of the tunes we played that everybody seemed to love. We did an arrangement of 9 to 5. It's the
The
Dolly
Dolly Parton tune, sure.
yeah, and but yeah, we incorporated everything. This is a funny story. I can tell it, and if there's any people out there that are real traditional jazz fans, please do not get offended.
Oh, there aren't any watching this channel. I know.
Anyway, so when my band, when Great American was really playing a lot of festivals, and in the beginning, uh, uh, not two people didn't know too much about us. They just heard it was a good band. And so all the solos were modern. Everybody in that band was a bebop player who loved playing traditional jazz. The chord progressions for the trad tunes were more modern. The solos were more modern. It wasn't going back to Turk Murphy and the Resurgence and all that. Everything was a little more modern, but we were playing that repertoire with a few additions. So the guys in my band had this joke about, we knew when the band was really swinging when white-haired people were leaving the audience.
I understand.
White-haired people. But
I know,
yeah,
we are them now, huh, Mike?
yeah, we are now. But so we were sort of an enigma back then, because the band was really a good band, and
Well, I remember.
and I say played the repertoire, but with a different style, and sometimes people would come up and they would comment. They say, well, why don't you sound like the other bands? Come on, and I say, I listen. If Louis Armstrong or Bix Beiderbecke or any of those people were alive today, do you think they would sound like what they sounded like in the 20s and 30s? Though, what people don't realize a lot of the time, in the teens and the 20s, the people playing what we now call New Orleans or traditional jazz were avant-garde jazz players.
Absolutely.
They were taking stuff that had never been played before.
Well, they were taking European standards and marches.
Yeah.
And there was no tradition. It was a very,
exactly.
very progressive art
form. They were groundbreakers. And so why not continue that? Jazz is not meant to be a museum piece.
Exactly.
And I know, from years ago when there were a lot of festivals, there were some bands that even played the solos off the records. And they were good bands and they played well, but I thought, why are you doing that? The people that played those solos played them better than you do. And you think they would really want you just to imitate their solos? It's jazz, it's improvisation. That's one of the key elements of jazz music, is improvisation.
Once upon a time in the jazz papers, I got into probably a year-long discussion with Tex Wyndham.
Oh my God.
About that same issue, So I can leave that conversation there, and you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. But jazz is a progressive form and always has been.
Right, exactly.
I heard that one of Louis Armstrong's big regrets was that he never got to record Yesterday, Paul McCartney's Yesterday.
Really?
Yeah,
Wouldn't that have been interesting?
absolutely. I
Man.
can hear it in my head.
Yeah.
Oh,
Oh,
well,
man.
yeah. So it's
You
very
know,
cool, and like I said, I was one time I was a big band trumpet player and extreme fan of yours, in those senses of the word. So I don't mind talking about any of this. By the way, our conversation does not have to be limited to Lou Waters' revival. You know.
yeah, and you know, I like that. I only got to Earthquake Magoons a couple of times, because I was, you know, in high school, and then when I went away to college, I didn't get in there to San Francisco that much. Um, and it was great hearing those guys. I mean, it was just fantastic. But here again, what they were doing and doing really well and doing it because they wanted to was recreating what had happened 50 years before,
Yeah.
for yeah, almost 50 years before.
It's also interesting. Quite often, I'm sure you've heard flack for the fact that you like the upper register and you think in that register and improvise. Obviously, those people haven't listened to Louis Armstrong.
He was one of the original high note
Up
players.
on double Fs in When You're Smiling, you
Oh,
know.
it's I'll tell you, there were people at the trad festivals who'd come up to me and say, uh, why are you playing high notes? And I would say, well, you know, it's like what you said. You know, being a lead player, I think in that register, but I'm really trying to channel Louis Armstrong. I'm not channeling, you know, big band players, and well, Louis Armstrong never played high notes. What? And I would start saying, listen to this, listen to this. What do you mean he never played high
He
notes,
was
man?
playing impossibly high things, especially for his equipment that he was on.
Well, yeah, and the time. I mean, people weren't doing that back then, you know, and so, you know, it's like not only was he playing high notes, but there are some things he did, especially recordings of the Hot Five and Hot Seven, where he's playing stuff that later on the bebop players played.
Oh yeah.
And one of the
Yes.
things that I talk about in my, one of the things I talk about in my clinics with the kids, one of the reasons that Louis Armstrong is the most important figure in the history of jazz isn't only because he made it popular and all that. If you think about it, he was the first horn player to play on the changes, not off the melody.
Correct. Yeah.
Most of when I was living
And
in New
and
Orleans,
actually,
all of those old guys were alive.
he was implying a lot of extensions on top of it.
Say again?
He was implying a lot of extensions to the chords. He
Oh
was
yeah,
It
and the
wasn't
thing is,
triadic, you
like
know.
I say, yeah, I talked to a bunch of those old guys in New Orleans when I lived there in the '70s, and they said, "Oh yeah, all our improvisation was pretty much off the melody," and that's how I teach kids. I say you learn the melody, and then you change the melody around. Don't worry about the chord changes yet, because you don't know what they are anyway. You're going to study. You're going to study improvisation and theory, but for the younger kids, you know, in junior high jazz band, they don't know what to do if they
Sure.
try to read chord changes. Learn the melody and just change the melody around a little bit, and then you can go from there. And so you think about it, Louis Armstrong, man, he was the first one that was really, and of course in the Hot Five thing, when Earl Father Hines was playing before Lil, when Earl Father Hines was playing, um, you know, most of the piano players there were playing in that era were playing stride piano. Well, he was trying to imitate Louis with his right hand, and you can't play stride piano and imitate Louis. So Earl Father Hines invented comping.
Right. In fact, they called it trumpet style.
Yeah, it's where he's playing chords with his left hand and just a single line melody with his right hand. You know, so those Hot Five and Hot Seven recordings, they got to be some of the most important stuff ever
Oh,
because
absolutely.
they were experimenting, they were trying things, you know. And you think about it, that those bands never played in public; they only recorded.
Yeah, at the same convention where you and I met, uh, in St. Louis, Clark Terry gave a clinic, and I was fortunate enough to go to that clinic. And the thing that really stayed with me towards that was learn all your theory. When you get on stage to improvise, forget it. That was a Clark Terry quote. So,
Yeah. And you know, here's an interesting one. You know who else said that? John Coltrane.
oh wow,
Almost exactly the same. Learn everything you can. When you walk on stage, forget it. You know, and you know that Clark was my mentor. You know, Clark and I was the party planner for his 90th and 94th birthday parties. And of
amazing.
course, I played lead trumpet on his big band back in 1978 for the European tour. And I mean, we were very close for, you know, the last 40 years before he died. And uh, uh, so you know, I knew Clark very, very well, and he was one of the best people ever put on the face of the earth. As Beside from being one of the best trumpet players ever put on the face of the earth, playing in his big band was like getting a trumpet lesson every night.
Yeah, I'd imagine.
And people don't realize this. Clark had an upper range that was ridiculous. He could play double C's loud. And sometimes when in front of the big band, when he's soloing and he's really into it, he's going up G's and A's and all that within his solos playing bebop lines. And it's like nothing to him. You know,
Phenomenal.
Maurice Andre, I guess, one time said the most perfect embouchure he ever saw was Clark Terry.
Wow, that's not a quote I would throw away.
You know, and I know that he also said that Clark Terry was one of his favorite trumpet players ever.
No, I used to tell my students anytime I thought I was getting good, I would put on the Clark Terry Oscar Peterson album, and it slapped me
Oh,
right back into place.
yeah, that album, that would be one of my 5 Desert Island albums. Oscar Peterson Trio plus one.
Oh,
You know, and now did you know that Clark and I did an album together?
I didn't.
Oh, I'll have to send you one. It's called Creepin' with Clark. Came out in 2000. We recorded
I
it
I
in
did
New
see. I'm
York.
sorry. I'm just saying. I did see that on discography. I didn't
Yeah.
realize that was Clark
Uh,
Terry.
we recorded it in October of '99, and it came out in 2000. We recorded it at Sony Studios in New York. We had a wonderful, you know, guy that put up the money for all this. So it was Sylvia Cuenca on drums, his regular drummer, Rufus Reed on bass, Reggie Thomas on piano, myself, Clark, and John Allred.
John, I did.
Yeah, John had just
I've known
moved to
John
New
for a
York,
very
and
long time.
oh yeah, and John, I love John, and of course I've known his dad for years, and so I knew he had just moved to New York. Clark never heard of him, and I said when I told him we're going to use John Allred, he said, "Well, who's he?" And I said, "You're going to hear the first few notes, and you're going to say, 'Oh yeah,'" which he did.
Yeah.
So anyway, so we recorded that to his dying day, in fact, at his 94th birthday party, to his dying day, he would tell people he recorded over 900 albums in his life. And he said that was one of his favorite albums that he had ever done. And at his 94th birthday party, somebody put it on the CD player. And we're sitting there with Clark, and of course he's in his bed, and a bunch of us for around. He starts singing along with the tunes on the album with this huge smile on his face. Yeah, yeah, I love that album. You know, so I mean, what a thing for me to have, you know, one of your 2 or 3 real inspirations and be able to do a whole recording with him. That recording was so much fun, and of course, a lot of musicians from New York were coming in to hear what we were doing, you know, and yeah, that I'll have to send you one because that
Oh,
album
please.
it got unbelievably good reviews. And
If you can't see it, I've got a green aura about me for envy right now. That's just wow. Clark Terry is one of my heroes, as anybody who
yeah,
has
yeah.
been in music.
Well, and the interesting thing is that I channel Clark, and a lot of times if I'm playing flugelhorn, you know, they'll come up and say, "Do you listen to Clark Terry?" I said, "Did I listen to him? I played with him," and so one of my favorite stories ever. We're listening to the playback of Strutting with Some Barbecue. We did it as a samba.
Okay.
We're listening to playback, and Rufus Reed says something, and he and Clark are talking, and we sort of go back to listening, and it's while we're playing fours. And Clark looks at me and he says, "Is that me or is that you?" And all I said was, "Thank you." Even Clark, a couple of places, didn't recognize it. It was really fun.
Have you mastered the circular breathing too?
No, he tried to teach me, and I could. He also tried to teach me doodle tonguing, and I can do it on one note, but not, because all that stuff, all that ridiculously fast stuff he was doing, that's doodle tonguing like the trombone players use.
Right, right. Yeah,
And he was a master of that and a master of circular breathing.
yeah. I actually sat through a Carl Fontana clinic where he was talking about oodle, but
Yeah, and I mean, and the thing is that everything Clark did, it looked so easy, it was ridiculous. If you go on YouTube and you put Clark Terry Big Bad Band 1978, there's some videos of that band uh, with me playing lead, and it was a great band.
well, I always told my students when I'm starting to teach them improvisation, I'll always make them listen to mumbles
Yeah,
so they understand what it is you're doing, which is trying to communicate without words.
yep, yep, exactly. And you know how mumbles came about?
No, I don't know the story.
And back in the New York Tonight Show, um, they had that stump the band thing where people in the audience would, you know, call a tune and somebody in the band would know it and he'd start playing and everybody'd start playing. Well, if there was a tune nobody knew, I don't know when he did it the first time, but I think that was the first time in public. Clark would go up and do a mumbles thing.
I see. That
So
makes sense.
I think he was probably doing it before then, but I think that's when the people first heard it live, shall we say, because that was before the Oscar Peterson Trio Plus One album.
Wow, that's a great story. That was a hell of a band too, of course. That Tonight Show band.
Say it again.
I said that Tonight Show band was incredible as far as
Oh,
personnel
God,
and talent. And
the whole time, both L.A. and New York. I mean, just an amazing band. And of course, it was the greatest gig because it paid well, but they recorded from 5 to 8. So um, you could be in the studios all day long. You go do your Tonight Show gig, and you could go play a gig at night if you wanted to.
wow, and make a paycheck, a great paycheck.
Yeah, and make a paycheck. And I'm sure they had benefits too.
So once we get out of this whole COVID crisis, what do you have coming up?
Well, I hope another tour for the Stan Kenton Legacy Orchestra. I had to cancel. It was going to be the best tour we've ever done. A lot of people ask me, how in the world nobody can put a big band on the road anymore? How do you do it? And I say, I guess I'm just too stupid to stop.
No, I'm not meaning to put you on the spot, but who's on the band now?
On my band?
Yeah, on the Kenton band.
Oh, when I was on the Kenton band.
No, currently.
Well, now, okay.
If you redo
Okay.
that, who's currently?
Yeah, it doesn't change very much. Saxophones are Kim Richmond on lead alto. Um, oh, come on. Now my brain is going to go. And Rick Condit on jazz tenor. Gary Anderson, who was the music director of Woody Herman's band for years, on fourth tenor. Joel Kay on baritone and bass sax, and Philip, isn't that weird? Just last name went out of my head. On the chair that doubles between alto and bari sax.
Okay.
And the trombone section hasn't changed in years. Scott Whitfield on lead trombone, Dale DeVoe on second trombone, Dave Kahn on third trombone, who's been playing lead on the Basie band for the last 25 years. Kenny Schroyer, one of the most recorded trombone players in history, on the upper bass trombone part, and Rich Bullock from Don Ellis's band on the lower bass trombone part. The trumpets are me, Dennis Node, John Harner, Paul Von Adam. All of us were with Stan when he was alive, and then a younger jazz player from L.A., Jonathan Dane, who's remarkable.
Too bad you couldn't find any really good players.
No, yeah, and then Jennifer Lydham's been the bass player. Uh, uh, Jeff Colella or Charlie Ferguson have been piano player. C.E. Askews, who was the leader of the Airmen of Note, has been the drummer for a while. Before that, it was Gary Hobbs, and so it's really interesting because you know I obviously I pay fairly well, but you know for it's like the studio players, and they lose money every time they come out. They don't care. We know it's like Carl Saunders joked. One of the best things about your tours is we know they're going to be over in 2 or 3 weeks. Not because it's a bad tour, but because it's not like the old days of 50 weeks a year, you know. So yeah, we go out for 2 to 3 weeks. Um, the band, the band has been together for this year will be 30 years, and first years we didn't tour much, but since 1999 we've done 23 national tours.
I'm sorry. Do you do the entire book? Are you doing things like from Adventures in Time and Cuban Fire and those things?
It's an interesting concept. You know, Stan had in his will he didn't want a ghost band. When I was road manager and Dick Shear was the assistant conductor, he and I, and you know, we talked about it with Stan. It wasn't that he didn't think somebody else could lead the band, because when he was sick in the 70s, he had other people lead the band. He was worried that some money people would get a hold of it and turn it into the Miller Band playing the hits of the 40s. And of course, he hated nostalgia. So,
Tampico wasn't one of his favorites then.
what's that?
Tampico wasn't one of his favorites.
No, we never played Tampico. But so when we started the band, it was started because De Anza College in Cupertino in California had a jazz festival, and it was 1991, which was the 50th anniversary of the beginning of the Canton Band.
Okay.
So Rory Schneider, the band director, asked me if I'd put together a band of Canton alumni to be the featured band for his festival. I said, oh, sure, I'll do that. So, you know, we got a bunch of the alumni, and where we couldn't fill alumni chairs, we got better players from San Francisco. And we did that concert. And everybody in the band is saying, you got to continue this somehow. This is too good not to, you know. And so I'm thinking, what do you do? So in the beginning, because I didn't want to go against the will, the name was way too long. The name was way too long. It was the Mike Vax Big Band featuring alumni of the San Canton Orchestra.
Yes.
And that's what our name was for quite a while. And we started touring and stuff. And Joanne Kenton, who was Stan's last real wife, was just loved what we're doing, and so got behind us. And she was really the mom to Lance and Dana, the kids of Ann Richards, because Ann just didn't want anything to do. And so she introduced me to Lance, and the two of them said, you should use Stan's name more predominantly. You're doing great stuff. And I said, well, I guess, you know, if you guys want to, you know, so we called it the Stan Kenton Alumni Band. Okay. And part of the thing was, because Stan hated nostalgia, every tour, we have a whole writing staff. Every tour we have new music written in the Kenton style. So our concerts are half old stuff and half new stuff in the Kenton style. So that, and everybody that has been associated with Stan, almost everybody, has said, you know, we think Stan would approve of the way you're doing it, because this is not a nostalgia band. This is not a ghost band. And so Leslie, his older daughter, who was really sort of in control of stuff, she lived in New Zealand. She passed away a couple of years ago. She got wind of what we were doing, and we became friends. And I have in writing from her giving us the blessing from the family to use the name. And in fact, she wanted me to call it the Stan Kenton Orchestra. And I said, Leslie, I won't do that. Stan's not here. You know, the bands that are the ghost bands, I don't know about that, because the leader isn't there and you just call it the same name. So that's where we came up. Leslie and I came up with a couple of other Stan's, used to be advisors, and we came up with Stan Kenton Legacy Orchestra, because that's what we're doing. We're keeping
it's a good name.
You know, so So we have the blessings of family, and we do the same thing Stan used to do. We book 95% of our gigs are in high schools and colleges. Any school that books the band for an evening performance gets a free afternoon clinic from the whole band. So we're continuing what he was the most fond of, which is jazz education. We're continuing his belief in that, and we're continuing his belief in creative music. And in our promotion, it says we are not trying to be the Stan Kenton Orchestra.
Yeah, I know that a lot of the ghost bands are not doing well by the memory, and I think you guys
Yeah.
are. I think you guys are doing a great stuff, of course. But I understand. I understand his feeling about that.
Oh boy, he hated nostalgia. Oh God, people would come up to him and say, because his 1952 era band. I mean, that's when it had all the famous great bebop players, and people would come and say, "Oh yeah, this the band is good, but boy, I love that 1952." Stan would get on him. I don't want to talk about that. Talk to me about my band now. I don't want to talk about that.
Yeah, you can only do Peanut Vendor so many times.
But we still do.
And
It's
fun.
the, it's the biggest crowd. Well, the trumpets go out in the audience. We do the whole bit, and of course the kids just love it. And I have a bit where when the trumpets go out in the audience, I'll find a lady that's on an aisle seat, and I'll play next to her, and then I'll sit on her lap and play. And it just. But yeah, no, we do Peanut Vendor every night, and we have so much fun with it that even though it would be boring just to do it as a concert piece, but the way we do it, and the trombones come out in front, and then the rhythm section in the middle of it goes into a very modern, sometimes not even Latin, out there solo thing that blows everybody's mind, and then all of a sudden we're back into Peanut Vendor. So yeah, we do that. And when I was on Stan's band, we did Peanut Vendor every night.
Sure.
There's certain things that are so ingrained with a band, but it's just like, well, on Stan's band especially, almost everything like that. The arrangements kept changing. Intermission riff, the arrangements kept changing on it. Um, I'm trying to think. Eager Beaver was pretty much like the old one. Uh, but then, yeah, like you say, we were doing stuff from Adventures in Jazz. We were doing stuff from once in a while from Cuban Fire. We were doing stuff from the Hair album. Um, we were doing stuff from Contemporary Concepts. Yeah, we were. There was a lot of the old stuff with Stan. But again, with Stan, half the concert was new stuff from the new albums.
Right.
And of course with Stan, with the Redlands album, which was the first album on Creative World on his own label. And um, the interesting thing is that was the first album. It still was the biggest selling album of the 70s. It really was a good album. And on that, we recorded Hey Jude. We recorded MacArthur Park. Uh, Come on, there were one or two. We recorded a couple of modern ballads. I think "What Are You Doing the Rest of Your Life." I'd have to go back and look at the liner notes because there's too
Sure.
many albums. But um, and the interesting, I have to make this short because it's a really long story. But I was third trumpet player on the band, not Maynard's third trumpet high note chair, just third trumpet player.
Right.
And Jim Karchner, the lead player, got ill and he wasn't doing well, and he died or later of a brain tumor.
Oh my.
He didn't know he had it then. But he actually, the week before we recorded Redlands, which of course was live in front of about 1,000 people, um, he went to Stan and said, I don't want to mess your album up. I can't play lead. I don't know what's wrong, but I can't play lead. So Stan's thinking of maybe bringing in Buddy Childers or Al Porcino or whatever. And Willie Maiden goes to him and says, "No, you use the kids that are in the band. They're playing your music really good. And if you use any ringers, you can't record my charts."
Oh my.
Oh yeah, he was adamant. So Stan and Dick and Joe Ellis, one of the trumpet players, and a couple other people had a meeting, and everybody said, "Well, Vax can handle the lead. We'll give it to him." So Friday and Saturday we play at Elitch's Gardens in Denver, great old ballroom, and playing the dance book. Saturday morning, I get called down to breakfast by Dick Shearer. And, people in the band are all worried about, because Stan was not himself. He was really nervous about this recording. And, we're thinking, oh, so I'm going down the elevator thinking, why am I getting fired? I'm just a third trumpet player, you know? And we have breakfast and they're doing small talk and I'm getting mad. What do you people, come on, if you're going to fire me. So then after breakfast, boy, it's like indelible. Stan's coffee cup, I won't use the word he used. Stan's coffee cup stops and he stares at me and he says, the trumpet section is really screwed up. And I'm thinking, here it comes. And the next thing out of his mouth is, can you handle the lead book? And I said, yeah, I can handle the lead book. And he said, good. And it better be right when we start recording Monday night. So Saturday night we play the dance book.
No
Sunday we fly
pressure.
to, yeah, Sunday we fly to LA to go out to Redlands University. Sunday night we only play 2 or 3 tunes for the kids, the beginning of camp. Monday night we start recording. And and so a lot of that stuff on the recording, almost all of it, I'd never played lead on. So I'm sight reading the lead book for this major recording. And the very first thing we have to record is here's that rainy day with the scariest one
Oh
more
my,
solo in
yes.
history. Yeah. So and that was my first major recording session in my life.
Well, talking about trial by fire once again.
Yeah, boy, let me tell you.
And obviously you made the book,
I'm yeah, yeah. Well, luckily, I mean, I knew so much of that stuff in my head. I'd been listening to the Kenton albums since 1956. I got my first album, Kenton and Hi-Fi, and so yeah, I knew a lot about. But a lot of the stuff we were playing weren't on the old albums because it was new stuff that was written for that band for that recording.
So
And
if somebody wants to hear Mike Vax's music, where can they find it? Where can they hear you? And where
uh,
it's available?
they
And
can Yeah, they can go to our website, which is Big Band Jazz. Well, we changed it. I got to remember now. Oh, friendsofbigbandjazz.com, because that's my nonprofit, is Friends of Big Band Jazz.
okay.
So it's friendsofbigbandjazz.com. And in there, you can click on a CD sales shop. And there's not only our recordings, there's recordings of a lot of other great bands that are in that sales shop. You can also go to mikevaxmusic.com. That's my other website. So
Okay.
friendsofbigbandjazz.com or mikevaxmusic.com. And there's all the information there, and there's all the stuff about the CDs.
And of course, you
And
can find some interesting recordings of Mike Vax on YouTube. If you look up the correct band names, you can hear.
oh yeah, I've got I'm on so much YouTube. It's like the weird thing is, bootleg recordings. All us musicians are like, oh God, another bootleg, and we don't get paid anything for those. And uh, when I was on the Kenton Orchestra, we recorded 6 double albums. So we did a lot of recording in that 2.5 years, and uh, I think the count of the Kenton albums I'm on now is up to about 21, with all those bootleg recordings.
Well, and,
Oh,
those a lot of those recordings are still for sale from different distributors.
oh
Um,
yeah, definitely. And a lot of them are on Amazon, and that kind of stuff.
and well worth the price, by the way.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's funny because sometimes one of the albums that's maybe been signed or something that's a rare one, you go on and you'll see this astronomical price. You think, is somebody going to buy that? And sometimes you see they did.
Now, are you currently repping for any brass firms? I know last time I saw you, you probably don't remember either, but it was at the NAMM show in Anaheim, and you were nice enough to sign a poster for my son when you were with Getson.
Yeah, my life has been a very interesting succession of things like that. That people joke some the guy he'll go to with a company for free horn, whatever. And I've been with quite a few companies, but each one of them I've been with a long time. I was with Kahn for 10 years, and then Kahn got sold and to be what became United Musical Instruments and then Kahn Summer. So everything was changing and I left. uh, I had been very close with Ren Shilke. He was sort of like an uncle to me, I think. And we hung out anytime I was in Chicago. Was down at the shop, and he loved playing duets with me. And one time I asked him, I said, Ren, you get all these great classical players coming in here. Why do I always have to play duets with you? And he said, well, because you're one of the few people I can hear when I'm playing. He was a loud player. So anyway, so when Ren passed away, he left with Joan and Ren Jr. that I would be the first clinician. So I was the first Shilke clinician. And it was a lot of prestige and not a lot of work because they weren't a big company. But
Right.
I was with Shilke for 12 years. And I helped design, with Ren, we designed the S series Shilke trumpets.
Okay.
And by the way, with Kahn, I had just designed a new horn for them when everything got sold, and I have the one prototype. So it's really cool. Anyway, so I was with Shilke for 12 years. We designed the S series, and I played an S32. Um, uh, and the people at Yamaha, I knew very well with Dale Thompson because I played on the Miller band with him, and Mike Bennett, who was the head of Yamaha America, it was funny because he's a very good Dixieland player. He ended up playing clarinet in my Great American Jazz Band. But they called me, they'd been after me to come with Yamaha. And I said, well, I'm with Shilke, But then I quit my teaching gig at University of Pacific. It's a long story, but I quit. I just couldn't take it
I
anymore.
understand.
And so I thought, what am I going to do? I've got to do more clinics. So I talked with the people at Yamaha. They gave me an unbelievable deal. And so I got to design my own horn with Yamaha. So I was with Yamaha for 13 years. Then the people at the top all quit. They were retiring and stuff. And I went to a meeting, and Yamaha's a great company, but I went to a meeting in Buena Park with all the new heads of the stuff. And it was only a couple of us clinicians who were more into the business part. And it was about a 2-hour meeting. And in that meeting, I never heard the word music. I only heard the word bottom line. And I thought, this is not the company I joined. And so I called John Whitman, the head of artists, who were good friends. It was a very emotional call. And I said, John, I think I need to leave. I don't think this is, and my horn something was changing in the way we were making it. Anyway, so it was amicable, but I left. And I thought, okay, so I'll either go back to playing a Shilke or whatever. And Dick Ackright, who built the Severinsen and Ackright trumpets with Doc Severinsen, and I have been friends for 50 years. He sold me one of my first horns. And he was the first one I called after I had quit Yamaha. He didn't like working on Yamaha instruments for some reason. So I made a joke and said, okay, you won, I quit Yamaha. And he just laughs. Well, he grew up in Wisconsin. His first job as a kid was with the Getson factory.
Okay.
So he and Tom Getson grew up together. So he immediately calls Tom Getson and says, listen, you should talk to Vax. He does more clinics than anybody. And he just quit Yamaha. So I get a call from Tom Getson. It's one of those things like when people say, Woody Herman called him or something, oh, sure. And Tom Getson. And he said, yeah, he says, I'd really like to have you come back here and we'd like you to join Getson and you can design your own horn. So I got to design another horn. So I went back and designed the horn, and I was with Getson for 11 years. And it was a great company, but the kids took over. Tom retired, the kids took over. Things changed. They wanted things changed. I think to them I was just an old guy,
Sure.
And so I said, okay, I guess it's time. I'll leave. And again, I didn't have any idea. And Terry Warburton found out, and Terry and I have been friends for a long time. And he says, guess what, Vax? I'm going to start making trumpets. Would you like your own trumpet? I said, sure. So then I joined Warburton. And I've been Warburton for 6 years, I think now. And we designed a horn, and Terry, his sense of humor is. So the name of my trumpet is the Vaccinator. It's actually on one of the braces. It says Vaccinator.
That's wonderful.
Anyway, that's my history with companies, and I guess for the trumpet players are interesting, it would be interesting. but I've been with each company a long time, and I've been able to design a horn for each one.
That's all part of the business. What I'm really trying to do on this channel is once again is give people a sense of the business of what we do. And
Well, yeah, and I think maybe sometimes people wonder when companies come out with new instruments, so how do they do it? What do they want to do?
yeah,
Well, you pick what that instrument is designed for, and you pick uh, one of the things that I learned all this from Ren Shilke. And one of the things that each horn that I've designed, I haven't designed it for me. I've designed it so that I'm comfortable playing it, but I've designed it so that other people will be comfortable playing it. So it's not this specialized horn,
it's yeah.
yeah. And so that's part of what you have to think about when you design an instrument. What is going to work for the best number of people? No instrument's going to work for everybody, just
Right.
like no mouthpiece is going to work for everybody. And that's really funny because the Shilke 13A4A, of course, was my mouthpiece. That was Shilke's largest selling mouthpiece for many, many years. And we shook hands, no contract. We shook hands. And this is back when mouthpieces were $15.
Oh yeah.
He said, all right, I'm going to put your name on the mouthpiece and I'm going to give you $1 a mouthpiece. Wow, sure, that's great. I have a signature mouthpiece. For 26 years, I got $1 a mouthpiece. That
Wow.
mouthpiece made the down payment on my first house.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's cool, man.
You know,
My last lead mouthpiece when I was still playing trumpet was I had played a 14A4A, and then I switched over to Marcinkiewicz, unfortunately, or fortunately, but I haven't played in about 30 years now. So
well, the interesting thing, see, there's correlation here. When I left Shoki, Joan was a little upset with me. Ren understood perfectly that it was a business decision, that Yamaha was offering me an unbelievable deal. But Joan got upset with me, so she said, "We're taking your name off the mouthpiece." And I said, "After 26 years, do you think they're not going to know it's my mouthpiece?" "Well, we're taking your name." Well, uh, so at that point, I've had a lot of oral problems, and I've lost a, 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 a bunch of teeth that couldn't be replaced, and my teeth have moved. So Joe Marcinkiewicz and I went through boot camp together in the Navy,
oh, I didn't know that.
and I got him on the Kenton band. So we've been friends most of our lives. So I went to Joe and I said, I need to make some changes. So I played the Marcinkiewicz mouthpiece I played the Shoki mouthpiece for 26 years. Joe made me a mouthpiece. I played that for 20 years.
Yeah, I still use a Marcinkiewicz tuba mouthpiece, but
Yeah, and then the only reason I changed was because when I went with Warburton, then using his equipment. But everything is, while there have been some changes made, everything is an offshoot of the old 13A4A Shoki.
okay.
I
That
still
had such
use,
that had such a great rim.
yeah, the rim's comfortable, and the thing is, it's fairly wide but shallow because I didn't want a narrow mouthpiece. I wanted a wider mouthpiece. It's almost as wide as a 5 Bach, but it's obviously shallower because it's I need that for what I do.
Absolutely.
I tell the kids a mouthpiece is equipment, okay, and it isn't going to make you a better player. And what it will do is help facilitate things, and so you have to find what works best in most situations. Unless you're one of those guys that changes mouthpieces, I'm not. Um, with Warburton, I do have, because it's the same, because he has the screw rim stuff.
Right.
It's Everyone is the exact same rim, but a little bit different depth,
Right.
and then I have different.
Depending on what
background.
you're doing for the
Yeah,
style. Yeah.
but they're all not that much different. But so I did everything, even when I was going and playing first trumpet for pops concerts for orchestras and stuff. I always used 13A4A and then the Marcinkiewicz, and so basically, where so many guys have gone through the mouthpiece search.
I did when I was
For
a
those,
kid.
for
I had a
those
box of
you that aren't
mouthpieces. Yeah.
For those of you that aren't trumpet players listening to this, the only people worse with a mouthpiece search than trumpet players are saxophone players.
That's true.
And their mouthpieces are a lot more expensive. But yeah, the trumpet players are always searching.
Yeah,
Well,
I actually started on a Martin a long time.
Martin Horn or
No,
and
Martin
Martin
mouthpiece.
mouthpiece. You remember what number it was?
I did not right offhand. It was the very first thing.
Oh,
It was the very first mouthpiece I got with my Olds Ambassador when I was a
yeah,
youngin.
yeah. I started my first horn of my own, not a school horn, was an Olds Ambassador.
They were great tanks for beginning kids.
Oh,
Indestructible.
you know what? They're still selling. Pros are buying them because they're a very easy horn to play.
Dixieland guys love the Ambassador cornets.
Oh yeah, exactly. And but yeah, so this whole thing with the mouthpiece thing, basically, I have played since 1970. No, 1970. I have played three mouthpieces.
Wow,
They've
that's
all been
that's
they've
something
all
you don't hear
been
from trumpet players. Yes.
yeah, they've all been almost the same.
Well, listen, Mike, this has been fun. I'm going to have to wrap us up here, but thank you so much for doing this.
Well, it's a pleasure. We haven't talked as much about traditional jazz as I thought we might, but that's okay too.
Well, I'm not really set in necessarily talking about traditional jazz, other than the fact that it's kind of where your roots came from.
Oh,
And
yeah, definitely.
For
And like I
example,
say,
another guy I have coming on to do an interview is Eric Marienthal.
oh
Out
man, say
and
hi to Eric for me. What a great player.
a lot of people don't know A, that he's an Orange County guy, and B, that he started his first big gig was Al Hurd.
Yeah, yeah.
You know,
He's such a great player, such a good guy.
when I was in
Yeah.
college and he was a high school kid, he put in more work than anybody I've seen in my life. He would be in the practice rooms, just, going away at his close books and things. He's a hardworking man, great player.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and he's done very well for himself.
He has. Well, thanks again, Mike. I hope our paths cross again someday.
Oh,
And,
I hope so for sure. When you asked what I'll be doing, we'll be doing another Kenton Legacy Orchestra tour next year if we can.
and
of
keep
course,
keep championing jazz with young folks.
yeah, well, I love doing it. And of course, my festival that I produce here in Prescott, Arizona, we had to cancel it this year. It was going to be the 20th anniversary, so we're not doing it. So next year, hopefully next August, it'll be the 20th anniversary of that. And we do have a traditional jazz component of that. We've got not extremely modern stuff, but we've got mainstream jazz and traditional jazz and big band jazz. It's really fun.
Well,
So
you've got some great
hopefully-
trad players around Prescott, actually. I don't know if you knew that.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
Hal Smith, the drummer, is now living in Prescott, I believe. And
Oh, that I didn't know.
and Matt Mooney on banjo, and a bunch of these guys are right
There's
around your area.
Yeah, a whole bunch. And down in Phoenix, too.
Right.
Gary Church was down there till he passed away. What a great cornet player. Oh, my God.
Well, thanks again, Mike. I really appreciate this.
pleasure.
And you take care now.
Okay, you too.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you all for watching Trad Jazz Today with Dan Zeilinger. Make sure you subscribe and turn on the notification bell. Videos come out every Wednesday and Friday.